Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. My next guest is Surbhi Kaul, the Vice President of Global Customer Experience for Juniper Networks. Juniper Networks is leading the revolution in networking, making it one of the most exciting companies in Silicon Valley. They have over 10,000 employees and $5 billion a year in revenue. Surbhi has quite a few tech roles in her experience. She's worked at Cisco and Google, YouTube, Netflix, and she has quite a lot of experience in customer experience and in marketing as well. She has a very unique leadership approach, which we'll talk about in this episode, and we're talking about B2B client experience. Please enjoy Surbhi Kaul. Surbhi, welcome to the Modern Customer Podcast. I've known you for a little bit now through the community. I feel so blessed to have met you. How are things going at Juniper and how's life?
Hi, Blake. First of all, thank you so much for having me at your podcast and for including me in the amazing community you have built around CX. Things at Juniper are going great. And as most of the enterprises feel the CX challenges, so are we. So hopefully we'll talk more about it, but so happy to be here.
So first I first was aware of Juniper Networks when we worked together to talk about the B2B client experience because Juniper Networks, it's a company perhaps consumers haven't heard of, but probably the Juniper is relevant to most people on the planet if they use their phone or internet. Can you talk about what Juniper does for the audience that don't know?
Oh, absolutely. So Juniper Networks is an infrastructure company that builds routers and switches, and now moving into building solutions for your infrastructure, your networking. So any of the big providers, cloud providers, service providers that are taking our applications and data and moving it around are probably doing it on one of the networks or backbones that are supported by Juniper. So yes, Juniper Networks is an infrastructure play. It was used to be a primarily hardware company, and now we are transforming more towards software-led and solution-led selling.
Okay, got it. So when you say infrastructure, like for example, I remember British Telecom is a client of yours. So you provide the network for like a telecom provider. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. So when you purchase services from a telecom provider or any of the cloud provider, most of the times they store and they move your data around on infrastructure, which comprises of three main things. So there is compute, which is the servers, there is storage where all your data is being stored, and then there's the network piece. And network component is like if you think of your freeways, your cars and automobiles and your trucks are like the data going on the freeway, and your actual freeway is being that infrastructure is what a network is, which helps transport your data over any backbone from point A to point B. So anytime, whether you're watching Netflix or YouTube or just doing a Google search, everything, each of those use cases is supported by infrastructure, which includes Juniper routers and switches.
So Serbi, obviously, these are really important and critical products right now in the world. There's probably nothing more important than connectivity at this point in time. Talk about your own role as head of customer experience. What does the scope look like?
Yeah, thank you, Blake. Great question. So, if you look at traditional infrastructure companies, it is very common that we build products and solutions that are pretty intense in how they're used, how they're onboarded, how they're managed day to day. And most of the times, if I look at traditionally how they were sold, when a product is sold, you also have to sell some training, some professional services to get all of that up and running. But the world is changing where the mindset of most of the B2B companies, if not today, then tomorrow needs to be where you're thinking like a B2C, where you're thinking of building products in a very consumer mindset, which means that you cannot build very complex products that take a lot of time to onboard and to get value out of. You want to be able to build products that are easy to onboard, easy to consume, easy to support and manage, because the world economy is shifting from a B2B mindset to a B2B2C mindset. So my end user is still that consumer mentality that needs a very easy to use product. And so experience has become the new game. So no matter what product you're selling, your thinking has to be about the experience that your customer is having with your product.
Surbhi, I was recently at a conference and a practitioner told me the story of a software provider that literally talked at them for an hour. They've been a customer of this software provider for a really long time. The software provider didn't ask one question about the client's business and they just wanted them to upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. And it was a terrible client experience. This is from a big software company that everyone knows. Why do well, I won't just say software, but why do B2B providers not think sometimes that what they're doing is client experience and they lose sight of what's important?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and something I struggle with on a regular basis, because what I'm seeing happen a lot in the B2B industry is that products are made with a very technology centric mindset, that we have a technology that'll solve a problem and you build it. And then customer experience and how that onboarding and utilization of the product will happen comes as an afterthought. And when you try, so that is, it cannot be externally put, tacked on aspect of the product. The thing I like about companies like Amazon and Google is the product leaders there are trained and are encouraged to bring that customer centricity into the product from the very get-go, which means that when you start writing your PRD, your product requirements document, the first thing you do is, how will the customer consume my product? So the first thing is about your PR, about your marketing aspect, so that you are thinking of the value you'll provide to the customer and the ease with which they will be able to get it. And then you start defining, how will you solve this problem, or how will you get to that end goal that you have just defined. So what I'm seeing in B2C is this customer centricity is at the beginning. What the challenge I'm seeing in B2B is that customer thinking and the utilization and the value obtaining is coming as an afterthought. So it's not glued into the ecosystem of how the product is being built. That is where I see the challenge.
Okay, so it starts at the beginning. It starts when you set out on your journey of what am I even selling? Why am I in business? What kinds of data do you look at every day? I know you and I have talked about data in the community that we're both a part of and beyond, but what does your data stack look like and how do you look at that every day?
Yeah, I think one thing, the good part about being in B2B is you have a lot of customer data available to you through your trouble tickets that come in, through the challenges your customers are facing today. You also have a loud mouthpiece from your sales organization and your market or your customer facing orgs that give you that input on a regular basis, whether it's customer success team, customer service team, or a sales team or a field team, that's giving you a lot of information on what your customers are saying today, what are their pain points, what are the struggles with existing product suite. And then you're also getting all this data from the support area, from the support tickets. Now, this is all the information I have about my existing customer base. Then the other data set that I like to lean on is, what is the competitive analysis? What are my competitors doing? What is Cisco doing? What is Arista doing? And how are they managing these pain points for their customer? And we are all in the same field. We are all trying to capture the same market share. So that clarity of what the competition is doing is the second thing. And the third thing I think product managers and CX leaders have to think about is, what is our own vision that we can create for a future of our customers where they are really having seamless and amazing experiences and not really having these struggles. So those are three data sets. So the two data sets and then your own ability to create a vision for the customer. That is how I feel that customer experience leaders should be thinking about how to solve the problem for their future customers or existing customers.
And do you ever spend time, Survey, looking beyond the data sets? Like how much time do you spend with customers, just talking to them, calling them, and looking through more unstructured feedback?
Yeah, I think that's again a wonderful thing and a wonderful ability that we have today is, you can do sentiment analysis based on a lot of social media and social platforms where customers are talking openly about things that you may not necessarily get out of talking to them or out of this data that I talked about. So there is social media that you can rely on, but nothing comes close to having a direct conversation with your customer. being able to
Right.
listen to them. What you called out just now, that, the software company that was just talking at their customer instead of talking to them and listening to them, I think that's an extremely important part of any role, any leadership role. I think any exec should be spending time, one-on-one time with their customers, just listening to them, understanding them, trying to be in their shoes, to feel their challenges and their pain points firsthand. Because data and looking at data is one thing, because I'll also share with you that too much data can be misleading. So I teach at UCLA, and one thing I was telling my students is that a lot of times data can be misleading because you can massage data in many, many different ways to give you many insights, some of which may or may not be useful. And sometimes we get confused between causation and correlation. So when you have this validating conversation with your customers, you can really say that, yes, what I was feeling, or getting a feel from the data, that these are the 5 pain points, are actually accurate. Or maybe it's not resonating with the customer and they are feeling some other pain points that your data did not surface as an insight to you. So validating that data with customer interaction is extremely important.
Okay, so I think our listeners would love to know, Serbi, about your scope and about your time. Like, what does your day generally look like? Like, how is it divided up? Like, what is do you are you looking at data? Are you managing different teams? Are you talking to the contact center? Are you talking to the CMO? What does your day look like?
Yeah, so my day is, depending on whether we're at the end of the quarter or beginning or what's happening. My day does tend to be spent a lot between talking to the various stakeholders within the company and outside the company, as well as with my own product and dev teams. And then outside of that, doing a lot of sharing of our thought process with other CX leaders, because CX is a new discipline, as you know, Blake. And you and I have talked about in several of your forum discussions where you invite all these leaders, that CX is a new muscle, right? Even though there has been talk, an actual articulation of a CX strategy for a company is a new thing. So I spend a lot of time with my own leaders and stakeholders articulating and evangelizing the CX strategy for the company, how we should think about CX, how CX cannot be an afterthought. And I try to insert that thinking in the various parts of the business, whether it's pre-sales teams, marketing teams, to the GTM teams, to the post-sales team, customer success teams, as well as customer service. So I look at that complete end-to-end journey that our customers go through with Juniper. And then I think about how can we improve the experiences by evangelizing with each of these groups to ensure they are thinking and investing in customer experience. Because agreeing is one thing, then it also takes putting your money where your mouth is to make investments and then improving those. And then last but not the least, how do you measure it? How do you measure that you're really moving the needle on CX for your company, whether it's through NPS or CSAT and other things? So I would say I spend most of my time with various stakeholders, internal, external, and then a big chunk with my teams as well, to ensure we are executing based on the strategy that I'm sharing with the stakeholders.
Okay. So, one of the things we always talk about on this show is measurement. What kinds of metrics are you looking at so you know if Juniper is successful from a client experience perspective?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and something that to be honest we struggle with, because the few things that we have been measuring, one is CSAT and the other is NPS, and both are scores or measurements that are static at one point in time. For example, NPS or CSAT is measured after a customer has had an experience, or a trouble ticket is created, and then there's a resolution, and post positive resolution, then we create like a CSAT, survey, and the customer responds to that. Now, think about the mindset or the state in which the customer is at that point. You have resolved their ticket. Of course, they're happy. Their network, their infrastructure is up and running, and everything is good now. So it's a very specific time when you're capturing that survey, and you're getting one sentiment. But my thinking is that if you really want to look at customer experience, you have to look at the customer sentiment and that score at every stage of the journey, not just at the end of a positive resolution. So one of the things we look at is CSAT, and we absolutely, our support and services team are super focused on this metric to make sure it's really good. And rightfully so, that is the metric for them. But if I look at a CX metric, I feel that this is not sufficient. So we have to think of how to measure the experience the customer is having and what is that sentiment throughout the journey. The second thing I shared with you is NPS. Again, this is a very static survey that happens once a year. And if you ask me, is it a really good indication? Maybe it's a guidance of where you're at, but it's not. If I had to compare several companies and how they are in just based on NPS, I would think that's not fair, because NPS again is giving that one static measure. I want to create an ability to have quick touch points with customers throughout the journey and then create a cumulative CX index. And this is something I would hope that in your forum, we should think of how to create one and establish one for the B2B world, to have some sort of a guidance, guardrails on how we should do a CX index measurement across the industries.
Yeah, I definitely think that while we like to say B2B is the same as B2C, it does seem that there is nuance there with B2B. I mean, you're dealing with a very high ticket item, you're selling the customer. If the customer is unhappy with the experience they have with you, it's not just that bad experience, it's their reputation, because they've invested millions of dollars and their reputation at work is on the line. And I have read that research shows that's really one of the biggest items for client experience in B2B is that client, it's not just a failed experience, it can also be their reputation. So how do you consider this, that you really have to make your client look good too for their colleagues? Like that really is part of what you're doing.
And in fact, this we talk about it internally quite a bit, that nobody gets fired for going with Cisco, the big known brand, right? But if a customer, or like you said, a buyer is choosing Juniper Networks, they're really putting their neck out there, and they're making a bet on you. So if our products do not perform at the level, at the commitment that we're making to the customer, that we're not hitting the quality bar or the performance bar, then it does really impact the buyer, and they're standing inside their company where they have taken a stance that we should move forward with Juniper products. So that's absolutely the case, that we have to think of the buyer as our partner, as our investor, as a trusted advisor who's standing up for us within their organization and saying that I trust this brand, I would like to go move forward with this brand. And the same thing goes with partners. The partners that are selling our products or are going and evangelizing why Juniper over Arista or over Cisco or Palo Alto Networks, they are putting their own brand online by saying that we support Juniper, we want to propose and evangelize and promote Juniper. Then we have to ensure that the trust that the customers have placed in them is also kept intact. So we have a lot of stakeholders whose image and whose reputation we have to protect along with ours when we think about how to build products and how to service them and how to create experiences in our products.
So, Surbhi, one of the things that people are very interested in from a customer perspective is the chief customer officer role. A lot of people who have that role are in it for the first time in the company's history. The first 90 days are a very challenging time. Can you just talk about some of the resources that you used and your first steps in the first 90 days of your role?
Yeah, that's a good question, Blake, because a lot of times in these companies, like I was saying, it's a new muscle. It's something that has not been there. So anyone coming new into a customer experience or a chief customer officer role has to first start looking at, what are the challenges? What are they to do? Like, what is the focus and the goal of the problem statement that they have been given? So when I started, the first thing I did is I went around to understand everything I could about the customer. What does it mean to be a customer experience leader? So to do that, you have to have these conversations with your customers. You really have to get inside the customer base, get a good understanding of what the customers are feeling, what the customers' needs are. And there is a philosophy of jobs to be done. Clayton Christensen has written books about understanding what is the customer hiring your product for. So you get that understanding. And when I talked to a lot of enterprise customers, it was very clear that when they think of infrastructure or network devices, they're not looking to engage with the infrastructure. They want infrastructure to run seamlessly so they can focus on their business. So if you're a retail or a health tech or a fintech, do you really want to understand Juniper routers and switches? No. You just want to make sure that your business has continuity, that your business has uptime, that you're able to run your business and support your customers by ensuring that the infrastructure is always up and running. So it's a very different mindset than saying that, our product is capable of this, that, and the other, versus saying that our product will just make sure you never have to worry about it. And
Mm-hmm.
that customer centricity comes only when you invest time in understanding what is the job that your customer needs your product to do for them. So my first 90 days, that's what I invested time in, is understanding exactly what the customers were trying to do, what their pain points were, and then becoming a champion and a spokesperson for your customers internally, which is why you do all this internal evangelizing, where you're going to each of the teams and saying, my customers need you to improve XYZ. Right. And you are the voice of the customer inside your company, inside your organization. And you are helping your leaders understand those pain points and get more clarity on what does it mean to be customer centric.
Yeah, I love that jobs to be done. Like, why are we even here? What are we doing here? I feel like every company would benefit from talking to their employees about that every single day to remind them this is why we're here. And it's similar in your own life when you have goals for yourself. You have to do hard things, and it helps to remind yourself why you're doing them. Well, this is the outcome we're looking at. Would you say you're a very outcome based leader?
I would say that in customer experience, a lot of times the outcomes are not measurable as much. But yes, absolutely, I focus on outcomes. I'm a big believer in OKRs and KPIs, and I try to
Hmm.
lead my teams with those annual as well as long term as well as short term goals. So we have a 3 to 5 year strategy on customer experience, and then we set annual OKRs and annual goals, and then track them on a quarterly basis. So, like I said, some of them are not absolutely measurable, but we can create an ability to look at second degree variation. I'll give you an example. Is if I'm looking at customer success, trying to do cross sell, upsell, the direct impact or the direct goal, measurable goal that I have for the customer success team could be the number of interactions, the number of email campaigns, the number of touch points with customers. But the secondary goal of that is the upsell and cross sell opportunity, the ability to increase revenue by upselling licenses or products and selling other use cases that we have not sold. So I absolutely believe in measuring both to show success for our organization and for customer experience, which tends to be a little harder, trickier to measure.
Interestingly enough, one of the best things you can do as a contact center is to be able to show how you're generating money. And to do that, you have to be able to cross sell and upsell. I actually had a client who really wanted to cross sell and upsell, but they were managing their contact center agents by the quality scorecard um, in such a strict way that the agents were just very awkward salespeople. They couldn't
Mhm.
cross sell, they couldn't upsell.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for our listeners that want to have the privilege and opportunity to upsell and cross sell, but they haven't really figured out their management style to make that happen?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is extremely important, that the goals, the KPIs, and the incentives that you have for your employees are aligned. Because, like you said, if the incentive incentive for the customer support teams is around quality, right? Then they're focusing on how they engage, how can they give the best solution for the problem at hand. Versus if their goal that you create for them is to upsell and cross sell, then they have to figure out how to weave in the information about other products, other adjacent solutions. So the first thing you have to do is look at your company goals, then OKRs that you're creating for the teams where you want to ensure that cross sell and upsell is happening. And the second thing I would say is that you really need to create playbooks. You need to help these teams because their core competency is not upsell and cross sell. However, they are best positioned because they're engaging with the customer on a regular basis whenever there is an issue. So you have to upsell or train your upsell in their skills, train these, whether it's tech engineers, support engineers, whoever they are, in how to engage with the customer to have those different kind of conversations which are slightly more sales oriented. And I will put in a plug for generative AI. Today, there is so much ability of curating that messaging on the fly as the customer is engaging as the agent is engaging with the customer, to give them insights on what are the right things to say, what is the right verbiage, what is the right tone, what is the right approach. And a co-pilot, a agent co-pilot, can really give that kind of help to your agent to have that conversation. So you have to first upskill them, up level their skills into having that ability to have the conversation, and then you have to help them through tooling and playbooks so that they can have really an intelligent conversation and engage with the customer meaningfully, knowing where the customer is, knowing what the customer sentiment is, and then agent co-pilot can help you with all of that.
Love that. Well, I think that's really inspiring for everybody watching and listening that, yeah, generative AI, it is interesting to see how it can really up level the agent experience and to help them find the language to talk to the customer. Surbhi, how do you feel about doing some rapid fire questions so we can get to know you a little bit better and have fun?
Oh gosh, let's do it.
Okay, perfect. Surbhi, what's the most important part of your morning routine?
Meditation.
What do you do to relax at the end of a hectic day?
Listen to a podcast, something that's calming and soothing and can take my mind off of everything that has happened during the day.
What's your favorite podcast?
Oh gosh, I have so many I listen to, mostly to do with products and customer experience.
Oh, okay. Hopefully you're listening to the Modern Customer podcast to relax.
Actually,
What
I
show
do
are
want
you
to say
watching?
that. So I want to change my answer.
Oh, no, no, it's okay. You don't have to say that because you're on the show. It's
All
okay.
right.
What show are you watching on streaming services right now?
Let me think about that one. So I typically tend to watch whatever my kids are watching, because it's that's my way to engage more with the children. So British Baking Show (GBBS) is one of our
Oh, yes.
favorite things we watch together as a family.
It's so relaxing. Well, that might be the answer to the next question, but what's your idea of perfect happiness?
Perfect happiness. Wow, that's a good one. Perfect happiness is when you're content with whatever you have around you in your life. So you can just be where you can just acknowledge and appreciate what you have right in there in front of you on your plate. That is perfect happiness.
What is one mental health strategy for managing hard days?
Meditation is my morning routine of my me time, just grounding myself before I start my day. But I think one of the things I feel is important to have, a set of trusted partners, advisors, friends that you can talk to on a regular basis. I think that is the best thing you can do on a hard day, is to share that with somebody. And I might call you, Blake, sometimes when I'm having a hard day to share all the
Please
challenges
do.
in the B2B space. But yeah, to have some trusted partners that you can discuss with, talk to, and then just bounce off ideas and let it all out of your system. So that's, I would say,
Yeah.
that's my go-to.
What is your favorite type of vacation, Serby?
Anything that has water and beach is I'm there.
If you could have lunch with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. I had that question recently asked, and I think it would be Albert Einstein. I was very
Mhm.
fascinated by his way of thinking, by his quirkiness, and I would love to pick his brains a little bit, how he came up with things that he could never test and just very futuristic, which we are still trying to prove his theories.
And lastly, if you had to describe your outlook in one quick motto, what would it be?
My outlook in one quick motto is optimism. I think when we, especially in today's world where we are looking at everything that generative AI can do. There is so much fear and trepidation, and then there's also a lot of excitement. And I believe that anytime there's a new technology or a new way of thinking, a paradigm shift, we have to move forward with optimism. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how you overcome your fear. That's how you overcome the challenges you're seeing around you. So optimism is the name of the game.
I love that. Well, Surbhi, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I hope you'll come back next year to tell us about all the great progress you're making at Juniper. And I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Blake. Thank you for having me, and such a pleasure to speak to you.
Everybody, you've been tuning into the Modern Customer Podcast. Until next time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on social media, including LinkedIn, Instagram, and X.